According to the official story of the 11th of September, at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. This rare footage shows the scene immediately after the impact, an hour before the entire structure collapsed. As you can see, it is a rather unusual scene. One would reasonably expect to see something of this sort. That is to say, pieces of the airplane, suitcases, debris everywhere, just like every other air crash on land. Instead, there is no substantial visual evidence of debris.
I have been on some accident investigation sites in the Air Force, and I have never come across any accident scene where there's no telltale evidence of the airplane that crashed. Here we have airplane sites, crash sites, that give zero evidence.
Where did the aeroplane go? Did it break up against the wall of the Pentagon? If it had done so, thousands of parts of the plane should have been scattered all over the disaster zone.
You know, things like engines and landing gears and brakes and tires are very difficult to destroy. Very difficult, because they're made out of very high-tempered steel, and I don't believe the airplane can be made to go fast enough to pulverize those things. I've never seen that happen before. You look around, there's a 16-foot hole for an airplane that's 100 and some feet wide.
According to the official story, the American Airlines Boeing 757 disappeared inside this hole. Can you see it? 5 meters. I repeat, 5 meters in diameter. Let's make some calculations. A Boeing 757 is, including its wingspan of course, 38 meters wide. And including the rudder or the tail fin, it is 13.5 meters high. To get all of this huge aircraft into a hole 5 meters wide seems rather implausible to me. In this picture, we can see a row of windows on this side and another row on that side. They should have been smashed and destroyed by the wings, and instead they're intact. These windows aren't even broken. For years, the military refused to answer the questions of an increasing number of people who rejected the official version. When the French journalist Thierry Meyssan published the book The Incredible Lie, utterly surreal explanations were put forward to shut the detractors up. One of these maintained that the airplane had been vaporized by the speed and the force of the crash. One very strange thing that doesn't make sense is the disappearance of various components of this Boeing. For example, the 2 engines. And what about the plane's wings? Where did they go? Had they been gasified? Instead, we are told the fuselage remained intact, and it smashed through the whole outer wall of the Pentagon and emerged through the other side, destroying a number of columns. The most solid part of the airplane is without any doubt the engines. In fact, these engines are made of a titanium steel alloy. It is so tough that it doesn't even melt at 3,000 degrees centigrade. Well now, in this wall we should be able to see, if nothing else, the holes made by the 2 engines that smashed into it. No, there is no sign of them. The 2 holes that we'd expect to see are not there.
And there's no indication of the wings hitting anything at the Pentagon, like you had at the North Tower. You can see the outline of the aircraft, a 25-degree bank angle. You can clearly see the outline of the number 1 engine, fuselage, and number 2 engine. It's a 25-degree bank. The wing dihedral is up in flight, and you can clearly see the outline of that airplane. But you can't find anything like that on the Pentagon. You can't find anything like that on the Pentagon.
These inconsistencies have created more and more difficulties for the proponents of the official version. So, while the military kept silent during this debacle, various photos of airplane debris found on the external lawns and along the supposed route of the airplane within the building started appearing in newspapers and on the web.
Va bene, niente gassificazione.
Very well, they admitted there was no gasification, but another theory was immediately put forward. It suggested that in order to enter a hole 5 meters wide, at a certain moment, the airplane somehow closed up its wings, just as dragonflies do. The plane entered the hole. Oh look, there they are. The engine and the other pieces of the plane were found there.
One of my experiences in the Army was being in charge of the Army's imagery interpretation for scientific and technical intelligence during the Cold War. I measured pieces of Soviet equipment from photographs. It was my job. I look at the hole in the Pentagon, and I look at the size of an airplane that was supposed to have hit the Pentagon. The plane does not fit in that hole. So what did hit the Pentagon? What hit it? Where is it? What hit it? Where is it? What's going on?
General Arnold, that very morning, immediately after that alleged impact, ordered one of his fighter pilots to fly over and down to the Pentagon to look and see what he saw and to report back to General Larry Arnold himself.
At that time, Major General Larry Arnold was Commander of Aviation at NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, in charge of protecting the United States and Canada.
His fighter pilot reported back to him that there was no evidence, zero evidence, of an impact of a plane at the Pentagon.
Since the Pentagon possessed 86 separate and complete video recordings of the incident, why didn't they show some whole portions of them to those people who had doubts about it?
The FBI was immediately at the scene and took the surveillance tapes and confiscated 86 videotapes, both in the Pentagon parking lot, in the gas station, across the freeway from the Pentagon, in a nearby hotel, in all kinds of buildings that had their cameras trained in that general area.
For a long time, the military authorities refused to release the footage of Flight 77's impact. But in 2006, the United States Department of Defense was forced to yield to Freedom of Information requests, and it released 4 video sequences. The video evidence from the Pentagon's Citgo gas station and the nearby Sheraton Hotel are of no use. But 2 samples of video footage captured from the Pentagon's parking lot have been offered to the world as definitive proof of Flight 77's impact with the Pentagon. They're almost identical.
Jet engines don't emit white smoke. You have some white smoke would come out of the aft end of whatever kind of vehicle. Quite frankly, there's not enough in those photographs to tell exactly what it was, but you can tell what it wasn't. And it didn't have the size as compared, if it was a real 757-200, it would be much bigger than the vehicle we do see in the picture.
With the best will in the world, can you see an airplane here? The Pentagon tells us you cannot see the airplane because, unfortunately, it passed between one frame and the next. One frame and the next. So where is the aeroplane? According to FBI agent Jacqueline Maguire, as you can see in this affidavit, only one camera took pictures of the scene, and those are the frames that we've already seen. The story of how this airplane is supposed to have got there is absolutely absurd. One cannot imagine how, in order to get down to the height of the Pentagon wall, it was able to make a 270-degree turn at a speed of approximately 800 kilometers per hour.
is a really difficult maneuver. And what I will say to you is that an experienced pilot with thousands of hours probably would have to take between 10 and 20 attempts. Skilled, thousands of hour pilot, probably 10 or 20 times before they would be able to pull off that maneuver. 757 is not designed to do that. 757 is designed to be basically a cruise ship in the sky. It's not acrobatic, so you just can't do that with one of those big airplanes. The air traffic controllers at the Dulles Approach Control, when they saw this target come in and make this turn, they said, oh, that's a fighter. Because military fighters can do that, okay? And military fighters with autopilots and being flown remotely, they have the structural capability. They are designed to be able to be that acrobatic.
Absurdity of absurdities. There is also the height at which this aeroplane was flying to be explained. It is supposed to have followed the lie of the land at 6 meters from the ground for 1 kilometer, managing also to jump over a hill. Then it went over a roadway, and it finally got there without making any other turns because by now there was no more space.
They have the airplane, the story has the Flight 77 was going 530 miles an hour, 460 knots, and it can't go that fast on level flight, down that low. If you're up high, the true airspeed can go up, and it can go that fast, but not down low. The air is too dense.
I challenge any pilot anywhere. Give him a Boeing 757, tell him to do 400 knots 20 feet above the ground for half a mile. Can't do. It's aerodynamically impossible.
So the story of how the airplane hit the Pentagon just doesn't make any sense at all.
After Hani Hanjour, the plane's pilot, had been identified, his flight instructor declared that his student was not even able to fly a small single-engine aeroplane.
These guys didn't have the experience to make that kind of maneuver, even if the airplane could fly that.
The man could not fly at all.
There's no way you could possibly come out of a 172 and fly a jet that you've never flown before. That's like showing me how to carve up a Christmas turkey and then say, go make a heart transplant.
Even if we suppose that such an incompetent pilot had the opportunity to fly a Boeing 757, we still have to ask ourselves how he managed to violate the most heavily protected airspace in the world.
Lo spazio aereo più protetto del mondo.
No untracked aircraft get near the Pentagon and near the White House.